Hi, I'm Chris Oldland, Editor-in-Chief of Field Service News, and welcome to this fourth and final excerpt from my recent video presentation that I put together with John Hunt, who is Managing Director of MIA for Astea. The full presentation, which is a 45-minute discussion between myself and John, really digs deep into the conversation around how service leaders are adapting to the changing world of field service. If you'd like to listen to the full presentation, if you're a fieldservicenews.com subscriber, that is waiting for you ready there in the premium content library. If you're not yet a fieldservicenews.com subscriber, there is a link below and you can click that, complete the brief form, and you will be able to access the full presentation as well. Across the last couple of weeks, we've done a series of excerpts from that presentation. In the first excerpt, we looked at exactly how much our world is changing as we consider things like Internet of Things and machine learning and augmented reality as technologies influencing how we approach field service, as well as the drive towards servitization, the move away from break fix. In the second excerpt, we looked at rethinking KPIs, because in a changing world, perhaps the current key performance indicators that we are using to measure, monitor and manage our businesses are no longer fit for purpose. So John gave me some great insight there into some of the best practices that a lot of his customers are using when it comes to KPIs. In the third excerpt, we looked at the changing generation of workforce. We are seeing a huge difference between the exiting baby boomer workforce that is approaching retirement age and the incoming millennial workforce, and how they approach learning, how they approach knowledge sharing. So it was a really interesting part of the conversation here. To tie it all together in this final excerpt, we're going to be looking at what that changing face of that engineer really means. Kind of building on the previous excerpt as well as information around the technologies, John and I discuss exactly what the skill sets are for the field service engineer of the 21st century.
There is a changing skill set requirement of the field service engineer. So let's begin with, what does the modern field service engineer look like in terms of the key attributes that field service companies are seeking in those new hires?
There's some key characteristics I think of embracing a change, right? Patient with leading edge, bleeding edge technology, if rapidly deployed in a pilot situation, that as long as they can be assured they can revert to the pre-innovation test, that can be enabled quickly and easily. They're less loyal to the company and more loyal to the type and locale of work. However, when they're loyal to a company, they will be fiercely so, and it will be because of resources at the top, like those chief people officers that I mentioned, driving those recruitment of the right type of person, the development and the retention of that person. That'll be key. And just more productive and more adaptable with shortened learning curves due to the increasingly intuitive and sophisticated solutions at their fingertips and on their heads. When you think about the evolution of wearables, it's now becoming mainstream and affordable and those types of things. I think just to name a few, I could go on and on and on, but I think those are four key characteristics that occur to me.
Okay. Something that I've been caught in two minds about for a while now around this topic. And I've heard arguments on both sides of this, so I'm going to just throw it up there and see if you have the wisdom that can help me kind of fall on either side, or whether it's, again, something that there is benefits in both approaches. But in some sense, I can see how technology, in particular augmented knowledge systems, we kind of touched on today, I can see how that would drive us down a path where we require our engineers to have a very broad but fairly shallow knowledge base, where an engineer is set out to cover a broad range of devices, and because they've got that supplemented knowledge, that they're able to dial in and get that experience elsewhere. Alternatively, I can also see how technology, in particular artificial intelligence, machine learning, could lead us to a place where we get much, much better triage. Again, touching on the example you gave earlier, that diagnosis being much, much more efficient. Remote maintenance, remote assistance solutions, being able to provide a solution where if the engineer is sent out, generally it's going to fall outside of the Pareto principle, 80% of the solutions we can fix. So it's that 20% where that engineer has to be the expert. You know, your brand is reliant on this guy going in and fixing it. It's a fix that can't be done via the algorithms. It's a fix that can't be identified. So in that instance, he would need a very, very deep level of knowledge, very refined. I can't work out which one of those two is the future. What's your thoughts on that?
I think there's a place for both. So much like management by exception enables any of us to focus on key parts of our jobs more, so do similar tools and technologies such as artificial intelligence, augmented reality, enable specialists to become even more specialized and invaluable to their organizations. And that typically results in a higher employee engagement and effectiveness, as they can choose to focus more and more on what they enjoy. Right. So the smart and those that desire to be specialized get smarter and more specialized. Yeah. But on the flip side, I think there's another end of the spectrum that doesn't wish to specialize. Their job to them is a paycheck and not much more. That's the reality. But they too can be productive based on that shallow, broad knowledge base example that you just made. They'll typically be less loyal to the company and vice versa. Be less valuable to the company. So I might care less about retaining that person. But they're going to have a role driven by a requirement for human intervention, which we've agreed is always going to be a necessity. Yeah. But they've got much less brain intervention, creativity, problem-solving skills. And as self-service becomes more and more prevalent in service systems, so will end customers be completing more and more of those jobs, plug-and-play jobs on their own, with no third-party human intervention. We talked in our last about my mom.
Yes.
In the mid-70s, who's doing her own service of her treadmill in her home, right? So I think that level of tech that is just a paycheck. They'll have job opportunities, but I think they'll be less likely to be in demand as a result of that.
Yeah, and it's also perhaps as you explain that, I think, and this is me maybe perhaps putting my fortune teller's hat on, but perhaps that's where we'll see the shift and the change in terms of the contingent workforce, in terms of the gig economy, and in terms of those that then embrace a career and those that want to, and is perhaps we'll start to see the broader, shallower knowledge. That is the stuff that you put to the third party or the gig economy, and then the internal guys. Like you say, there isn't much more value to that refined knowledge.
Okay, so this brings us to the end of this particular excerpt from the series. And now remember, if you've enjoyed this conversation, if this is a conversation and these are topics that are important to you in your role as a field service professional, there is a full 45-minute discussion where John and I went deeper into some of these topics. And that is available for you if you're a fieldservicenews.com subscriber. It's already there in our premium content library waiting for you. Now, if you're not a fieldservicenews.com subscriber yet, good news is you can still access the full presentation. There will be a link below. You need to click that link and complete the brief form that's there. Please do, of course, read the terms and conditions, and having completed that, you will gain access to the full presentation. But for now, thanks ever so much to John for joining me on this excellent discussion, and thank you all for taking the time to listen. We'll see you again soon. Take care.